So now that we've talked about this idea that high pressure inside equals low flow outside and low pressure inside equals high flow outside, we can talk about the way that Sam Pilafian and Pat Sheridan like to describe the character of the Airstream. They're always using three adjectives. Those three adjectives are even, constant, and at the tip of the lip. So what does even mean? Even means that when we breathe, we're not going to hear the pitch change. So if it's uneven, it'll sound like this. If it speeds up, you can hear the air speeding up as I bring it in, or if it slows down as I bring it in. You hear that pitch, right? Drop as I inhale. That's an uneven breath. So an even breath will have the same sound essentially. If I create the resistance at the lip, it's going to have the same sound. More or less the same pitch, as best as I can do today. Constant means it's always moving. So as Sam said to me in one of my lessons with him, it's either coming in or it's going out. It doesn't stop. And I think this one's really important because a lot of us got taught as trumpet players, breathe, set, play, and that three-part breath usually ends up giving my students more tension than they need. So here's an uneven, unconstant breath, right? If I breathe in. So by contrast, here's a breath that is even and constant. So even, constant, and tip of the lip is just the energy. It's where we want to place the energy of the exhale. As wonderfully effective as breathing gym exercises are, and I'll post a link in the description and make sure you have access to those materials. They are amazing, and there's some really important differences between playing a trumpet and playing a tuba, and those really have to do with the shape of the oral cavity or the vowel that I'm using. For us as high brass players, as trumpet players, our vowel is generally going to start from like an I or an eh, so that the tongue is relaxed, it's lining my top molars, it's flat. Essentially the higher vowels are what we're going to use to play the trumpet. So when you read these materials that talk about thinking toe and T with small t with a capital OH, or ta with a capital AH, take that little piece with a grain of salt, because trumpet players trying to play with vowels that are too open oftentimes end up injuring themselves. That's not to say there may not be a few people who that works for, but definitely the vast majority of us, you're going to want to move towards a smaller oral cavity shape, that is to say like a higher vowel. So now that I've talked about the character or the nature of the exhale on the trumpet, which is to say, right, relaxed, fluid, easy, falling, sighing, all of those things, even, constant, tip of the lip, those are all great ways to get us closer to understanding the nature of the breath when we play the trumpet. We need to talk about the second aspect of breathing on the trumpet, which is the direction of the breath. And for me, the best way to introduce this is to tell you a little story about my first lesson with Tom Rolfs. I sat down and he said, well, go ahead and warm up and just play a few things and let me listen to you. And this is when I was a doctoral student. And after I played for a few minutes, he kind of chuckled to himself and said, you sound pretty good for someone who breathes backwards. And I was like, what? What do you mean breathes backwards? What does that even mean? And over the course of the next several weeks, what he helped me understand is that when I was breathing in a way where I would take a breath and then I would collapse down on the breath. I would sit down on the air is the phrase that he kept using. You're sitting down on the air. So I would take the breath and then I would play and sit down on the air to basically press it out of me. He helped me understand that the direction of the breath actually needs to go the other way, that when we breathe, we need to take a breath that goes, and then we exhale. It's our abdomen that collapses as we exhale. Another way of thinking about that other teachers of mine have talked to me about is keeping the sternum open and relaxed but high. And oddly enough, this is a facet of trumpet pedagogy that isn't debated a whole lot. The vast majority of teachers talk about keeping the sternum up. There's one common pitfall here is when students start to think about keeping their sternum high, they also tend to raise their shoulders. But that adds extra tension, and we don't want tension. It doesn't help our sound. So we want our shoulders to stay relaxed and our sternum to stay high, so that when we exhale, it's the abdomen that collapses and allows the air to come out. So the direction of the air is very much about an upward direction to the air. Inside of us, there's a much talked about muscle in breathing, which is the diaphragm. The diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscle that essentially separates the chest cavity from the viscera in our abdomen. When we inhale, and I'll post a link to a nice animation of this that I often use on YouTube, the diaphragm, this dome-shaped muscle that's attached to the rib cage around the edge, when we inhale, it contracts to lower and flatten, which means that literally when we exhale, the diaphragm relaxes into its repose. So we inhale and the diaphragm contracts, and we exhale and the diaphragm relaxes. The exhale is literally relaxation. Exhalation equals relaxation, not contraction. And this is a huge key to playing the trumpet. So we can check in with our bodies all the time we want to do all we can to have a soft belly when we're playing. And if we're playing in a healthy way, that soft belly will stay in motion. Yes, it will move in towards the spine as we exhale. It literally, the abdomen will sort of gently push the viscera up underneath the diaphragm as it relaxes, but it is relaxation. That is the nature, that is the character of the exhale, and that is how we are wired to exhale. And to fight that is to fight the most natural process in the world. So I want to give you 2 concrete doors into understanding or experiencing what these things feel like. So we're going to start with some concrete doors into the character of the breath. And one of the simplest ways to get to this is literally just take your mouthpiece off and take a nice tall breath, and then just let go of the air through the horn and allow the horn to regulate the flow. And then I can put my mouthpiece on, and I can either have my lips together and sigh through the horn, or I can wrap my lips around the mouthpiece and sigh through the horn. Where I'm allowing the air to fall out of me rather than feeling like I'm blowing the air or pushing the air. Oftentimes what I'll do with a student is, once I've got them relaxed and letting go of the air like that without a sound, then we might go to starting with the lips together and just parting the lips with a relaxed exhale that's falling and bringing the horn to us. And the key is trusting the falling airstream. So basically our lips are as close together as they can be without making a buzz, and the air is falling out between them, and then we bring the horn to us and we get a sound. And so if you're like me and your habit for years or decades, as was my case, is to sit down on the air and to clench in your throat when you go to play, this is a really helpful exercise for that. And this is what Tom Rolfs had me do in my lessons for weeks and weeks. And he called these no breath attacks, which was essentially, if you remember, we talked about how we can take a breath. So I just let go. There's a point at which the pressure outside of me and inside of me equalizes. We're going to call that 0. At point 0, that's what we're going to call no breath. So we're going to take a breath, let as much air comes out as wants to on its own, and then start a note. So it's doing attacks without taking a breath. In fact, I'm playing on no breath at 0. By doing that no breath attack, you're essentially forced to have the direction of the air come up from here. So if I'm playing well, then I'm going to trust that sigh, go out into the 5, and move up and down the horn without blowing harder to go higher. So Diego, I know this is a lot of information. Everything that I shared with you today are things that really helped me as a player. Put together different pieces about what we really want it to feel like to play the trumpet, and what the nature and the character of the breath is on the trumpet. I know that these bits and pieces were incredibly important for my development as a trumpet artist, and hopefully they'll be helpful to lots of you as well.